Let's switch up your muscle building strategy. So in today's video, I'm gonna outline a no BS 7-step game plan that's actually backed by science to help you continue to build muscle in your 40s and beyond. So before we jump into the video, make sure you smash that like button and let's jump into step number 1. The first thing to understand when building muscle is we need to make sure we're upping our intensity. Now, when people think of intensity, they start to think of CrossFit, crazy workouts, you're sweating, you're burning tons of calories. What I'm actually talking about is training closer to failure. One of the biggest things I see with guys as they get a little bit older is they start to lower their intensity. And part of that is because they've maybe been hurt in the past, they don't want to get banged up, they want to actually continue to go to the gym, and they start to experience some of those nagging injuries that come when you've been training for extended periods of time. So what ends up happening is they start leaving what's called reps in reserve, way too many reps in reserve. What this basically means is during your working sets, when you're actually lifting weights, you leave a few reps in the tank. Now, this isn't a bad strategy most of the time. You don't need to go to absolute failure on every set, but it's a good idea to actually go to failure at least one set per exercise. We want to send that muscle building signal to the body so that it actually has to respond by building new tissue. If we're always going a few reps shy of failure, in some cases I see guys stopping 4 or 5 reps short of failure, then we're not sending that strong muscle building signal. I see this all the time inside of our VIP coaching program when I have these busy executive clients that join our team and they go, yeah, I train really hard. And then they come out to one of our live events and I put them through a workout and they're like, oh my gosh, I didn't realize I had 6 or even sometimes more reps left on that set. I've always been stopping well short of failure. So step number 1, which is of course backed by science, is we want to take our sets closer to failure, in some cases all the way to failure. I would say most of your working sets should be around the 1 to 2 reps in reserve, meaning gun to your head, you could probably do 1 or 2 more reps, but in some cases, I want you to go to absolute failure, meaning your perfect form breaks down and you can't do another perfect rep. This is going to ensure that your intensity is high enough to continue to send that muscle building signal. Tip number 2 is to choose the right exercises, because look, I get it, it's tempting to jump into some of the fancier stuff, some of the stuff that just looks cool, and honestly, there's a time and place for that. And the programs we build inside of our program, which by the way, you can learn all about in the description of this video below, or even in the first comment. I put a link. If you're interested in learning more, you can go check that out. But one of the things we like to do is we build a program that includes the right exercises and enough variety to actually enjoy your training. But we can't get away from what we call the compound exercises. These are exercises like a variation of a squat, a row, a pull-up, a chest press, a bench press, an overhead shoulder press, some kind of deadlift. And before you freak out and go, oh, I don't deadlift because my lower back is hurt, blah, blah, blah. There's variations of all these movement patterns that we can build specifically for your needs, right? Because you might be dealing with some pre-existing injuries. You might be dealing with certain parts of your body that are weaker than others that could result in an unfortunate injury if you don't have the proper program in place. But ultimately, these movement patterns are important, right? They are the main muscle building movements that you're gonna find in most well put together programs. So as we get older, we start to shy away from this stuff. Why? Because it's hard. Some of these things actually hurt a little bit, right? And it's the good kind of pain, obviously. But we don't want to go and start doing a bunch of curls and calf raises and crunches, or even things like crazy kettlebell movements that, yeah, might serve for certain purposes, but we want to stay committed to the compound movements. So my suggestion is when we're building your program, the first exercise or the first 1 or 2 exercises in your day should be compound based. Now, if you're worried about hurting yourself with something like a back squat, totally understand. You can do something like a goblet squat with a kettlebell or even use a machine. I love machines, which we'll talk about here pretty soon. But it's important to keep the movement pattern a part of your program. The movement pattern meaning the exercise that involves more than 1 or 2 muscle groups. So for example, a bench press involves not just your chest, but it involves the front of your shoulder, it involves your tricep, it involves your forearm, and it involves your core to a certain extent because you have to brace yourself when pushing heavier weight. So we can do a chest press using a barbell, dumbbells, a hammer strength machine, a cable press machine. There's a lot of different variations. We can even do a body weight exercise like a push-up to still get the same effect. It just comes down to your needs, your preferences, your starting point, and what you're ultimately after. But keep those compound movements in your program. Tip number 3 is to make sure you have the right recovery. As we get older, you've started to accumulate some training volume, right? You've put in the time, hopefully over the years, you've been in the gym, longer than a 13-year-old who's just starting out. I remember when I first started lifting weights when I was 13, I could go in the gym every single day and do the same exercises and never really get too sore, right? I was always ready to go the next day. Well, that changes as you get older, right? Your body starts to accumulate some wear and tear. We sit too much, our shoulders get tight, we've gotten a lot stronger, so we're pushing more weight. So we just need more recovery. So what does a solid recovery plan look like? Well, my rule of thumb is I don't like to train the same body part any sooner than 48 to 72 hours after I hit it earlier in the week, right? So for example, if I'm doing a push-pull leg split where on Monday I'm doing chest, shoulders, and triceps, I wouldn't want to hit that again probably till Thursday at the earliest. Now, a lot of you don't have the time to go to the gym more than 3 or 4 times a week. So we like to train multiple body parts on a given workout and then wait to train them again to allow them to recover, right? To allow the body to actually say, hey, you need some more muscle. Let's start building more muscle and let's make sure you're not hurting yourself. I don't want to put too much consistent wear and tear on a certain body part and then ultimately hurt my shoulder, my back, my leg, whatever. So we need proper recovery. So that's the first thing, is the time between workouts. The next thing is we want to make sure that what we're doing during the course of our time outside the gym is leading to more recovery. So these are things like walking more to get more blood flow to the body, making sure we're resting enough, right? So we want to make sure our sleep is dialed in. And then of course our nutrition, which we are going to talk about here in depth here in a minute, but it's important to dial in our recovery. Now you might have seen things on the internet like cold plunges, saunas, all these fancy red light therapies. Some of these things are pretty valuable. I will say I would shy away, because it's backed by science, I would shy away from doing a cold plunge right after your workout. This can actually diminish your ROI on your training session when it comes to building muscle. A cold plunge could be utilized for mental benefits, first thing in the morning to get you awake. Could be just something you do to increase your mental toughness. I would save that though for the days you're not training with weights. Now the sauna, on the other hand, that can be implemented every single day. The sauna has been around for literally thousands of years, going back in many different cultures when it comes to overall health. So a sauna can influence and improve your recovery. Now, there's a lot of different details when it comes to the sauna. This isn't a video on saunas, but I would say you want to have as much heat as possible for about 15 to even 25 minutes, okay? So infrared saunas are phenomenal. They're just not as hot as your typical sauna. So a typical sauna can get anywhere from 200 to 230 degrees, and it's gonna be pretty uncomfortable. So that's really what you're after when implementing the sauna for recovery. Other things like red light therapy, the jury's still out on the effectiveness of some of these things, but I would strongly encourage you to test them out, right? It's not gonna hurt you to implement some of these more cutting edge strategies into your day-to-day. Let's go to the next tip. So when it comes to nutrition, the name of the game is protein, especially when it comes to building muscle as we get older. We start to neglect our protein intake. We don't want to do that. You want to keep your protein steady and err on the higher side when it comes to your protein intake, especially if your main focus is building muscle. How much protein do you need? Well, there's going to be a lot of things out there that say different numbers. My suggestion when we're in a full-blown muscle building phase is 1 gram of protein per pound of body weight. Now, you might go, whoa, that's way more than you've recommended in past videos. And I would say you're absolutely right, because I wouldn't recommend you jump all in on a muscle building phase unless you're pretty lean. You're in a healthy body fat range. So our lean body mass and our total body mass are going to be a little bit closer together, versus if you're 30% body fat and literally a third of your body is body fat, then it doesn't make sense to eat that much protein. We don't want to support the fat tissue on the body. But if you're at like 12% body fat or 14% body fat, it's a much smaller number of fat on the body. So we can get away with a little more protein. All right. So at the end of the day, if you can't eat that much protein, I would say getting 1 gram of protein per pound of lean body mass is your next best bet. All right, so you just do the math in your head. If you're 200 pounds and 10% body fat, you have 180 pounds of lean body mass. So 180 grams of protein would be smart. Now you can eat up to 200 grams of protein in that case and be just fine. I like to live in ranges, so I'm not about perfection. I just want to be consistent. And so for me, I just set two targets. One is like my minimum protein per day, and then two is like the max that I want to eat per day. As long as I'm within that range, you're completely fine. Now, what sources of protein should you be focused on to build muscle? The old school approach, man. The old school chicken, steak, beef, eggs, tuna, salmon, egg whites, Greek yogurt, eggs, shrimp, all of it, right? The stuff that has a complete amino acid profile really should be what it gets built into your nutrition plan. My other suggestion is try to stick to a rotation, right? So you don't have to eat the same exact protein sources all the time, but I like to have a consistent rotation of food so I don't have to think too much. It's like, all right, today I'm eating chicken, tomorrow's beef, next day's salmon, and then I'm just gonna repeat. Pick choices that you like that are easy to put into your day and just make sure you're hitting your protein goal. So before we get into the next tip, I wanna know in the comments, what's been your biggest struggle when it comes to building muscle? I'll personally answer every single question that you drop down there, and I may even make a video on the question if it's a good enough question in a future date. So just jump into the comments right now. Let me know what's your number one question or struggle when it comes to building muscle. Let's go to the next tip. Tip number 5 is to cut out the vices. I see so many of our clients come into our program. They want to make a total transformation. They're sick and tired of letting time fly by without being in shape. They sit down, they look at their watch and they go, oh my gosh, I'm literally in my mid 40s and time's flying by. If I don't start now, it's going to be too late. But what they don't realize is over the past 4 decades or more, they've started to implement way too many vices that are going to hold them back when it comes to building muscle and ultimately transforming their body. What are some of those vices? Well, number one, I'd say is probably alcohol. Alcohol is not your friend when it comes to building muscle. It destroys your recovery. It destroys your sleep. It's a toxin. It can completely sabotage your digestion. It stores body fat, or it leads to storing body fat. It's just not a great part of a muscle building plan. I'm not here to tell you to never drink alcohol again. That's totally your decision. What I'm gonna tell you is you're gonna need to cut back. If you're drinking every week, multiple times a week, that is not a recipe for building muscle. That's a recipe for getting skinny fat and ultimately getting more and more unhealthy. So along with alcohol, the other vices I would say typically result in poor muscle building is lack of sleep, right? So if you're staying up late, you're going out late, or you're doing work late at night and you're sacrificing sleep all the time, you're gonna struggle to build muscle. I'd also say things like smoking or partaking in any kind of recreational drugs, that kind of stuff just can lead to less optimal results when it comes to building muscle. So I know over the years you developed a social lifestyle, you developed habits. I get it, we're all subject to our own vices, but we want to be careful to not include things that are going to sabotage all the work that you're doing in the gym. So just take stock of your day-to-day. What are some of the things in your lifestyle that you can cut out that will lead to faster muscle gains? All right, so we're almost done, and these next two are super, super important, so make sure you watch all the way to the end. So the next one is your internal health. Now, as we get older, guess what? Things start to happen under the hood. So what is the number one thing I see for guys who are trying to build muscle? Well, it's testosterone for the most part, right? Low testosterone and just not fully optimized internally. So the number one thing you can implement is to get consistent blood work and to work with a trusted professional who can analyze that blood work and tell you what's going on, what you need to be worried about, what you don't need to be worried about, what you might need to implement into your rotation of supplementation. It's important, right? And so many guys neglect this. Why? Because they just are too busy. You know, you got kids, you got wife stuff, you got travel, you got work, and you're like, oh man, I haven't checked my blood work in however long. Now, it's becoming more normal to get blood work, so I like to see that the masses out there are starting to dive into checking what's under the hood. But this is something that I would do immediately if you haven't done this in the past 6 months. I would go get your blood work looked at, get a full panel. And guess what? You don't even have to go to a doctor. You could just go to LabCorp or MedQuest or any of these other places that offer walk-in blood work. Go pay for yourself, get the full report, and then you can go hire a professional to actually take a look at things and tell you what you need to do. So at the end of the day, our external look is often dictated by our internal health. So if you're not building muscle at an optimal rate, your energy is low, you feel lethargic, you just don't feel like yourself, or maybe you don't feel like your 30-year-old self anymore, go get your blood work checked. I promise you, at a bare minimum, you'll uncover one or two things that can be optimized that will help lead to better muscle building results. Okay, let's talk about sleep. I mentioned it in the recovery part of today's video, but sleep is one of the most important, if not the most important thing when it comes to building muscle. And I'll tell you, as a society as a whole, we are sleep deprived. Most people average 5 to 6 hours of sleep a night. And truth be told, that's just not enough for most people. Now, I'm not a lazy guy. I'm not telling you to go sleep 8, 9, 10 hours, but some people do need more sleep when it comes to building muscle. And if you're one of those guys that's struggling to add muscle as you get older, and you take a look at your sleep and you're averaging that 4, 5, 6 hours a night, I would highly suggest trying to get at least 30 to 45 minutes more of sleep. Why is this so important? Well, during our sleep cycle, our bodies are fixing and repairing what's happening inside, right? So if we go lift weights, the body is repairing and fixing muscle tissue. It's helping your body generate more muscle tissue. It's also keeping you healthy, and a healthy body is going to build muscle way more effectively than someone who's not healthy. So there's so many things that take place recovery-wise when we sleep. And if we sacrifice it, well, we're sacrificing gains. So put your priorities in line. Don't need to stay up late and watch that Netflix special or that second or third episode. Just get to bed a little bit earlier or sleep in a little bit more. You don't need to get up and go do, 13 things in the morning as part of some fully optimized morning routine. Some of those things might be cut out, give you a little bit extra sleep, and then all of a sudden, you're looking, feeling, and performing your best. Now, speaking of looking and feeling your best, I did a whole video for guys over 40 who want to burn more stubborn fat. If that's you and you're like, hey, I'd like to build muscle, but I'm really just kind of annoyed with this spare tire around my waist and I want to get rid of it. This video, I'll put it up here on the screen, will be your ticket to mapping out a whole plan when it comes to losing belly fat, similar to how I just outlined a whole plan when it comes to building muscle. Make sure you like this video, and remember, life moves fast, make it count. If you want to make it count, go check out the description of this video. I put a link to schedule a conversation for guys out there who want to be champions. They want to have the total package. They want to look good with their shirt off, feel their best every day, and ultimately live a high quality of life. Our VIP 3M system is where it's at. Go check it out, and I'll talk to you in the next video. Life moves fast, make it count.